times here as a podcaster where you not only get to meet incredible people, but some of those people you actually know and you already know that it's going to cause such a rich discussion, but just you'll have a lot of fun with it. And that is how I can describe how I feel about my guest today, Maria Garcia, who is doing so many amazing things that you will learn about. But first, I want to welcome you, Maria, to the Power Transformation Podcast. Welcome.
Thank you, Alicia. It's such a pleasure to be here.
And it is a pleasure having you. And audience, I have to tell you, we as entrepreneurs, but also people in general, we navigate so much. And I have screenings with all of my guests. And what a screening does is we talk more about each other in terms of me learning more about the guests. We also see if we're a good fit. And although I had already known Maria through a group we are a part of, I still wanted to have this screening. So once I do the screening, then we set up the actual interviews. And I hadn't heard from her. So I was just thinking, oh, she's probably busy, life gets swamped. And then she and I saw each other, met for the first time in person a couple of weeks ago. And she was bold and courageous and just straight up asked me, do you still want me on your podcast? And I said, absolutely. I was just giving you time to do what you had to do. And it was a matter on my end where my email has not been going through to some people and I had to do troubleshooting. But the point is, she followed up with me because we can all drop the ball sometime. So I want to start off by just thanking you for following up with me and having the courage because it was not, girl, I definitely wanted you here. And I'm so glad we have that opportunity.
And I'm glad I asked because I wasn't sure if I was going to ask. I just figured, well, maybe I'm not suitable for the show. But then I
Girl,
saw it and I said, let me just say it.
exactly. And if she hadn't said anything, y'all, I wouldn't have known. And that is a lesson already that I can say is what a person can take is that sometimes you just have to speak up because people can make assumptions or think something. I just thought she was busy or maybe she changed her mind about it. So thank you again. And that leads me to our first question. I always like a nice, fun, lighthearted icebreaker question. And that question for you today is, what would you say, Maria, is one of your greatest strengths?
That's probably one of them is I will ask because the worst is the answer could be no. That's it.
Mhm.
That's the worst thing can ever happen.
Yeah. And have you found yourself always being like that, even when you were younger, as a child or a teenager, being one who would speak up and would ask? Were you more proactive as opposed to being passive?
I would say as a child, yes. And then
Mm.
during I moved to the US when I was 6, and that changed everything for me. I became quiet, reserved, and just a totally
Wow.
different person. So
Exactly.
between like 6 and maybe 35, I stopped speaking out, and now I'm like that again.
Yes, you are. Yes. And that is very good. And that is a truly an honorable trait to have. And so before we get into the heart and the crux and the core of your story, or even about what you do, answer this for us. Who is Maria Garcia?
Ooh, that's a big
Mm.
question.
Uh-huh. Answer in any way you like. It's no right or wrong.
I think because of the way my life has gone, I think not to blow my own horn, but I think there's a lot of wisdom
Mm.
that I've gotten that I like to impart on people. So I'm a teacher by
Mm.
nature.
Mm. And when you say you're a teacher by nature, what are you most compelled and led to teach people in this chapter and journey of your life?
Right now, it's mostly nutrition. and the
Mm,
power of it to change our lives,
hmm.
transform our lives. Totally.
Yes, indeed. And that leads me to asking this simplistic question, and you can answer it in the way that you choose. But if you were to describe for someone exactly what it is you do professionally in order to earn a living, but to also serve others, what would that job title be, or what would you say it is that you do? And how do you go about being of great service to others?
In the simplest terms, I would say nutrition coach with a sexy voice, but there's a story behind that which I'll get into.
Yeah.
And I basically, my flagship program is 3 months, and we go through a whole journey of resetting your relationship with food. And we start with food psychology so that you can actually make real, long lasting change versus trying to use willpower,
Hmm.
which the whole diet industry is predicated on. It does not work. Right? And by the end of it, people see what feels good to them. They make their own plan, but their
Hmm.
lives are radically transformed just by their relationship with food. And I never realized the importance of that. But that's really the foundation of your life. If you get this piece, everything else just stacks nicely on top of it. But if that piece is off, you're going to be on a shaky
Yeah.
foundation.
Yeah. And thank you for answering it that way. And, I have a past health coaching background, not the same thing that you did or do, but the holistic health aspect was really huge. And I did that type of coaching for many, many years. But a person may hear you say that you're in this nutrition space and may automatically assume, well, then does that mean she's a registered dietitian? What does that mean? Are you equivalent to what a dietitian is, or how is your work distinctive and set apart from someone in that particular industry?
And that's a good question. Well, that's a big question. Registered dietitians are teaching the mainstream knowledge. I am certified a nutrition coach, but not a registered dietitian. And everything I say, or most everything I teach, goes against what dietitians teach.
Mm. Oh, okay. How so?
Well, for one, and I will say that this was me, I'm the example. I was a vegetarian for a while because I thought being a vegetarian was healthier. I understand some people do it for ethical reasons. That
Hmm.
was not me. I was doing it for health. And I thought that was healthier. And now I learned that it's not healthier. And that if you want to be a vegetarian, you must supplement very carefully. Otherwise, it's going to have consequences down the
Yeah.
line.
Hmm. And I actually agree with you on that. And please, listeners, anybody, do not think that we are telling you, oh, you can't eat a particular way. That's not what we're saying. But I know for me, several years ago, I was vegan for a few years, like real straight up vegan, no animal products. And that was fully wholly plant-based. And I had one of the worst Crohn's disease flare-ups in my life when I went that way because for my body, too many raw nutrient dense vegetables can actually trigger my gut in a harmful way. And people are always baffled like what do you mean? I can't overload myself with too much fiber. And there was a mantra in my health coaching school where we would say one person's food is another person's poison. So it's not a one size fits all approach to that. And you by far, Maria, are a true example of something not having of someone rather not having a one size fits all approach to your life and your journey. So take us back to some of your early origins and explain to us how, with you being in this nutrition space now and as a leader, Explain to us or describe how different characteristics of leadership showed up in you even at a very early age.
Well, for one, I would say that being outspoken or speaking my mind was something that is a leadership trait.
Mm,
Um, for a long time, I wasn't the leader, and now I think I am that again, but I do it by modeling. I do it by being the change I want to see.
hmm And so, even in this nutrition space that you're in now, that's typically not something that someone from a very young age says, oh, this is what I want to do for the rest of my life. There's usually something else that happens. So, prior to this space you're in with new nutrition, paint a picture for us of how your life was before, and then share with us what led you on this radical path of being so committed to and passionate about nutrition and helping others with it.
My life was totally different. So I
Mm.
went to college. I earned degrees in finance, international business, and a minor in Spanish.
Oh, that's so extremely different.
Very different.
Uh-huh.
And after college, I didn't want to start working right away. So I went and lived in Germany for 2 years
Oh.
and learned the language. And because I figured, you know what? The euro is based on the German mark. So because I studied international business, it
Hmm.
might be helpful to learn German. That was just a thought. But I just didn't really want to go start working. All right.
Yeah.
And I was working in Germany, but not at a company 9 to 5. Right?
Hmm.
And then I came back after 2 years to the US. And one day, um, I thought I had food poisoning. I got ill, very ill, and I ended up at the hospital.
Mm.
And they ran tests, a bunch of tests, and then finally somebody walks over to me and says, Miss, we think you're having a stroke.
Whoa, wait a minute. Hold on. You go one day from thinking food poisoning to someone saying, ma'am, we think you're having a stroke. What extreme differences? Tell us more.
Well, I was that same day, but I just kept getting sicker and sicker, and I wasn't getting better.
Hmm.
So I went to the hospital with my family. And when the person walked over and said that, I thought, so much for food poisoning. Right? But
Hmm.
then I thought, what's a stroke? Because I was 25 and I had never heard of the word.
Oh.
Nobody in my family ever had one. I didn't know anybody who ever had a stroke. It just was not in my world. Right? So within 24 hours, I was totally paralyzed from the nose down, which means I was also mute.
Wow. Okay. That is loaded right there. Because although I've never had one, I'm very familiar with stroke. Unfortunately, people in my family have had them, including my sister, an uncle, cousin, people who are other cousins. So I understand stroke. I understand what I thought were to be the symptoms. However, Maria, you are really clearing some misconceptions because many, many, many years ago, I had food poisoning. So I know what that's like. What I'm not wrapping my head around is the fact that your stroke symptoms mimicked what would have been what you thought was food poisoning. And that's not typically what a person thinks. So tell us when you hear about the stroke, and you said you didn't know what it was, but when finally 24 hours later, you come back to consciousness or whatever, and from your nose down, you're paralyzed. Take us to that moment of when it connected with you like, oh my goodness, this is not a joke. This is something serious. And why can't I feel my body? Take us there.
Well, first, I want to start off by saying that I did not think that the stroke symptoms and the food poisoning symptoms were the same. I just didn't know what the stroke symptoms were because I had no reference for stroke. And because
Mhm.
I tripped, I just made the assumption that it must be food
Oh.
poisoning.
So I'm gonna have you answer this, but I think this is very important. Since you thought you had food poisoning, what were the symptoms that you learned later on that you exhibited that caused the man to say, "I think you're having a stroke"?
Well, they did tests, CAT scans, and that's what it is.
Oh,
But I thought I had a bad headache. I was throwing up. I had vertigo, and
oh,
I don't know. I
okay.
just assumed it was an assumption, total assumption on my part.
Okay, I've got you. And the reason why I ask this, especially for the people listening, sometimes a misconception with the stroke can be all of a sudden your speech slurs or it sounds confusing. But the fact you had a
And it
headache,
was.
vertigo, see, you had head and vertigo can cause slurred speech and it can cause headaches. So honestly, unless you didn't have those CAT scans to confirm it, that's what's fascinating to me is the fact it seems to me, and it's even clearing up ignorance that I had. It seems to me that even with stroke, it's not necessarily a one size fits all approach. Is that people can have different symptoms of it, but it shows up differently, and then it's confirmed through more deeper tests. So when you got the word, or you learned and registered that you literally could not feel anything from your nose down, describe that moment for us and how you were able to process all of it.
I could actually feel everything. I could feel people touch me. I could feel, but I couldn't move. I just couldn't move. I
Oh,
was totally non-responsive. And it was the most, I want to say terrifying, but terrifying is not, does not qualify what I felt. I felt, wow, I was basically trapped in my body and I wasn't comprehending what was happening. It
mm.
was just total confusion, total angst. It was so many different things. And what made it even worse is that nobody realized I was conscious. They thought I was in a vegetative coma.
Oh, wow. So you were able to hear everything.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. You were able to hear everything. How were you able in that time when you couldn't talk or communicate or move or respond? How did you stay sane, for lack of a better word? How did you not lose it completely?
Well, in the very beginning, there was a lot of movement, a lot of visits, a lot of doctor visits even, and just there was always stuff
Mhm.
happening. There was always, I had a lot of sensory input. I wasn't really left to my thoughts too much, right? And also I was very confused. And I was thinking, what is happening? I wasn't, it
Mhm.
didn't even dawn on me that this was permanent. I was
Mm.
just trying to comprehend what was happening.
Mm. So, although you could hear things and you couldn't move, obviously, I'm talking to you today.
Yeah.
Obviously, you're moving. Obviously, unless a person hears your voice, I wouldn't even make the assumption of stroke. My late godmother had cerebral palsy, and sometimes that strain can come from that or a vocal cord disorder. You are literally a living miracle. So tell us how that rehab process, how it truly transformed you into a new version of yourself, and how you were able to have the emotional intelligence to really navigate that season of your life through that healing and rehab process.
The rehab process was extremely slow. I was at the first hospital for 43 days. While I was in that hospital, I was getting no rehab, no treatments. However, my family, including my brother, they created shifts so somebody would be with me 24 hours a day. And so
Wow.
my brother would come in every day and he would move my limbs. And I credit that with largely why I'm able to move today because early movement is so important. And if they had
Hmm.
not done that, I would have gotten no therapy whatsoever.
Mm.
But anyway, when I went to the rehab hospital after 43 days, I thought, oh God, this is so cool because they're going to patch me right up and I'm going to go back to my life.
Wow.
This is
Oh
what I
my.
thought because I had no reference for what was happening still.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
And I thought, they're just going to make me go back to the way I was. I'm going to be totally fine. That did not happen, right?
Mm.
And the day I realized that was not going to happen was the first day I went to therapy, and my therapist gave me a hairbrush, and she said, Maria, here, comb your hair. And by this point, I could move my right arm.
Hmm.
So I thought, oh, this is easy, right? Uh, So she gives me the hairbrush. I pull it up until about 3 inches from my head. Could not get it to even touch my head.
Oh my gosh.
That's when I realized, holy crap, the
Mhm.
mountain that lays ahead of me. And I began to wail. I was wailing.
Oh, shoo, Maria, when you just said that whale, I got chills because I can, oh girl, that is tough and that is scary and oh, I know I would even be a bit infuriated. Like, what in the world? Because is it safe for me to say, is it more of those things where here you were trying to put the brush up, you can't, but in your mind, deep down inside, you're like, I know I can do this?
Yes, that's
Hmm.
exactly what it was. I even remember telling a friend of mine at the first hospital because I couldn't speak. But eventually, when my family realized I could move my arm, they brought my laptop to the hospital. So I would type word, letter by letter, what I wanted to say. And I
Hmm.
remember saying to a friend, I feel like I'm in the Twilight Zone because my mental capacities were all there. They were all there. My body was just not working at all the way I
Hmm.
knew it should work.
How do you, I want to get the wording right on this because thinking about the premise of our show, and of course, we will talk about more of how you ended up in the space you're in professionally, but how do you end up finding a peace with it? Or was it more so not necessarily a peace, but more so an acceptance of what was happening? So how did finding peace and or acceptance lead to a quite transformational and miraculous healing that you've had? And yes, I acknowledge your voice. I'm not taking that away, but literally just by looking at you or even talking, people may not necessarily assume that you went from that to who you are today. So how did peace and acceptance play a role in your healing?
They play a big role. I was in victim mode for a long
Hmm.
time, as you can imagine, right?
Yeah, of course.
So it was a why me, crying, blah, blah, blah. Eventually, I went home. I went home in a wheelchair. I went home in diapers.
Mm.
Yeah, I was
Mm.
cross-eyed for a long time.
Wow.
Yeah, it was, wow, what an experience. What an experience. And I couldn't go to therapy because they wanted me to be potty trained to go
Mm.
to therapy, right? So I had in-home service for a while. Meanwhile, my brother kept coming over every day and making me do different things, which I hated. I thought, my family, they're all drill sergeants. Just leave me alone. But you know what? I'm so thankful they did that because They held on to hope when I had none left. I
Mm-hmm.
was ready to throw in the towel. I mean, my mom, even, we have a recumbent bike, the kind that's got like a chair.
Mm-hmm.
And so she would take me to the bike and she'd make me ride. First time I go to the bike, I sit down, I put my feet on the pedals. They slip right off. I couldn't even hold my feet on the pedals. My mom tied them with a rope to the pedals. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Now that's love. That is love and determination. So once you saw Maria, all of your family rallying around you, as well as other people who really loved you, how did that affect your determination and your willpower to want to get back to as much of a normalcy as possible? It may not be the same way prior to the stroke, but how did knowing that you had people really in your corner affect that for you to make you more determined and gung ho about recovering?
Well, I have to say, if that were not the case, I would not be here today because I would have given up. If I didn't have people rally for me the way they did, I would have
Mm-hmm.
definitely given up because I wasn't willing to really do anything. They were just, they would make me do stuff. But what really shifted things for me was probably 3 years into it when I could finally walk. And I went through all the different stages of walking, walker, canes, and blah, 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 and falling down a lot of times.
Mm-hmm.
But
Mm-hmm.
when I was finally steadying up, I joined the gym. And when I joined the gym, there were yoga classes. And I thought, that's modifiable. It's going to be relatively doable for
Yeah.
me. So I went to yoga, and it was such a powerful mental exercise. For me, it's what finally started lifting the black cloud. And I started to see things differently.
Mm-hmm.
And I
Mm-hmm.
started looking for how to get myself better instead of, oh, poor, pitiful me.
Mm-hmm. Because at the end of the day, we can choose to have that pity party, but who's really going to care and what is it truly doing to us? Is it serving our best interests or not? Or is it just repeating these loops? And it's not to say that you don't have those moments, because I acknowledge that where you even say, just the fact that you wailed or you were getting angry or frustrated. So I don't want anybody who's listening to this misinterpret it. We're not saying to not feel what you feel. It's a real thing. Pains happen, hurts happen, but the key is not staying there. And I think this is a beautiful time to say, here you are taking so much time to really get strengthened, to get to a place where you can function again, even a bit more independently. How then do you go from that to this shift into nutrition? How did nutrition play a role? And did you find out later that nutrition played a part in you even having a stroke?
Yeah, so I think that wasn't the cause that was given to me. I
Okay.
was told that I was told that birth control was the only risk factor. But today I know that there was a degree of malnourishment happening. But that's not something I was told. That's something I've learned myself. Um, and that's a pretty long journey. So when I found yoga and things started changing for me, then I started researching treatments, doing treatments. I went to Germany for treatment. I had
Wow.
stem cell injections. I did
Mm.
hyperbaric oxygen therapy, and I was just throwing noodles. I was
Yeah.
throwing noodles because I figured if I still live another 50 years or whatever it is, I need quality of life. I
Hmm.
cannot stay like this. So my life became about treatments, looking up treatments, find the latest innovations that might help. And I did that for the better part of 10 years.
Oh, wow.
10 years. And
That's a
that's
long
all I did.
time. Yeah.
That's a long time.
Hmm.
And when I got to the 8 year mark, actually, when I got to the 10 year mark, I had been plateaued for 2 years at about 70% of what I was before the
Hmm.
stroke. And I figured, you know what? I plateaued. This is my life.
Hmm.
This is what it's going to be like. So I better just start to live it. And I
Indeed.
said, yeah. So I figured, I'm done. I'm done. I'm tired of looking up treatments, living for just trying to get better. And I want to just live. That's it. I want to live.
Hmm.
So I went back to school. I started working as a friend to get out of the house, really. And I was just plodding along. That was what I was doing. And then 15 years after the stroke, I saw an ad for a nutrition course. And I was interested because one of the things I had been doing as well in that time was playing with my diet. I had been
Hmm.
macrobiotic, pescatarian, and I was newly a vegetarian. So I figured, whatever, I'm going to learn something new about a topic I already like. That's all I thought. So I enrolled in the course. Within 6 months, I'd recovered another 20%.
Wow. So you
Years,
went from that 70% to 90% by now.
pretty much. I
Oh
mean,
my
those are,
gosh.
that
That
was
is
true.
miraculous. Yeah. How did, out of curiosity, and if it didn't, that's fine too, but in what ways did faith play a part in your recovery? And what I mean by faith is literally that the inside hope, the inside vision, faith in believing that there was a greater plan or purpose behind all of this, faith in that there is a power that I acknowledge or I serve that is going to really guide me through this. How did faith, in a sense, play a part in your journey towards healing?
You know what? That's a great question. I would say when I was in the hospital, now we're going back. When I was in the hospital, I was depressed all the time. But then once in a very blue moon, I would have the feeling that I'm chosen for something
Mm,
that's choosing. And so when I finally got to the 10 years, the thing that I would say that I did that led me to finding this nutrition course was surrendering. Because I'd been
mm.
working so hard for 10 years to get my life back. And then finally I said, that's it, I'm done. I'm just gonna live. So when I finally surrendered, that came into my life.
Wow. And surrendering is key. What does that look like to you when you say that you surrendered? What exactly does that mean?
Being so stuck on the outcome,
Mm,
just
mm.
letting go and letting life.
Yeah. And when you're working with clients that come to you needing nutrition and needing results and solutions and just not buzzwords anymore, and with you being that trusted authority and that trusted figure, how does this idea of surrender even apply in the work you do to help your clients surrender to poor habits and to live a healthier lifestyle?
Well, in the way they have to surrender their old lifestyle and trust that I will guide them.
Hmm.
First program, basically. That
Hmm.
type of surrendering, because when you are used to living a certain way for 20, 30, 40, 60, and even 80 years, it's not that easy to change your ways.
Hmm. Yeah, it's not because we get used to eating a certain way. We get used to certain comfort foods we have. Even for the people, and I want to make this clear, nutritionist. And so anybody that's listening who may want her services, nutrition coaches and wellness people such as yourself, sometimes it's a misconception that only people with those poor habits come to you, but I found that sometimes it can be a person who's really thinking that they're eating healthy and doing right and something is off. So what was that aha moment that made you say, this was not just something that I wanted to implement on myself in terms of you going to school and all of this, but what in the world led you to say, I want to help others transform their lives through nutrition? Was there some pivotal moment that stands out, or was this a build-up, a gradual build-up, and then you walking into it?
That's a great question. I love that question. So when I signed up to become a coach, to get certified in this modality, I had zero intention of coaching anybody.
Uh-huh.
Zero. I just wanted to know what happened to me because to me that was downright sorcery. I didn't
Mhm.
understand how I can go from 70% to 90% in air quotes
Yeah.
15 years after a stroke and after having done all the things I did, and nothing gave me those results. And I was ecstatic, but I was really frustrated as hell too because I thought, man, if I had known this
Mm.
when I had the stroke, I wouldn't have suffered 15 years because I would have recovered so much quicker, so much better, and I probably wouldn't have this sexy voice.
Uh-huh. But I think everything happens in perfect timing and in
True.
perfect alignment. And so take us to the moment when you put yourself out there as a nutrition coach and you started to share with people what makes you that trusted expert. What does set you apart? Because in 2025, nutrition experts, and by the time this is played, it'll be 2026, nutrition experts are a dime a dozen, or people who want to help people. But you have a certain factor to you that I'm not going to say, but I'm curious to hear from you. What makes you different and what sets you apart from everybody else out there in particular?
Well, I would say that I walk the path. I
Uh-huh.
really walk the path. And I feel like I'm confident in what I'm saying because I lived it. I know
Hmm.
exactly what nutrition can do. And it was during the certification process that we had to have a pilot class. Like we had to have a pilot class. That was part of it. So I gathered a few people and and then everybody in the course, I mean, you would think my story is Micah's because it's unique, but it's pretty
Hmm.
unique. Not many people live what I live. However, everybody in my class was having their own miracles.
Wow.
Miracles. There were people lost over 40 pounds in 3 months without scans and with healthily. People stopped using CPAP machines. Operations were averted. Somebody stopped using reading glasses, which I
Mm.
was like, wow, this is
Wow.
amazing.
Yeah.
And
Wow.
that's what got me interested in being this lighthouse for other people
Mm.
because I felt so fulfilled and so gratified by living
Mm.
that experience.
Mm. That is wonderful. And living the experience is true because just the fact that you're here today is the power of having that faith, the power of having a support system. Shout out to your family because the fact that they had shifts, they were determined to rally behind you. That's love. And sadly, a lot of people don't have that, but it is such a joy to know that your family, although you said it felt like they were drill sergeants and it wasn't always easy, I can hear it now and look back on it and see they really love you. And that was all done in love. And they were hoping for a turnaround too. So being the person that you are now and walking in the fullness of yourself, how has your relationship with your family as well as your friends groups really enhanced since all of this has happened?
That's also a very interesting question. I feel like the relationship with my family has gotten better,
Mm,
deeper, and with friends, I do have to say that a lot of people fell by the wayside.
mm, yeah. Was it more so out of fear and discomfort, you think?
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah,
I was 25,
yeah,
and we're 25-year-olds are not really mature, you know?
yeah, yeah. And that was something else that you had to navigate is really shifting into this new identity of who you are as a person, knowing deep in your heart, I'm that same friend, you all. I'm still her. I'm here, but not being able to really have your friends to see that it can be very uncomfortable. And so these years now of you living with a disability and everything like that, that you've actually taken that disability and turned it into an incredible superpower. What would you say to someone who may have had everything going well for them in life, and then boom, something hits them and shatters or puts their world upside down, and they're in a space right now, a dark space of not knowing how things are going to turn around, whether it's with their health, maybe they had a job they loved and then they got laid off. It could be a friendship separated, anything somebody's going through right now. What is a tool, and I know you're a nutrition coach, but just using the art of coaching, what is one technique that you would tell them to do so that they continue to say, I'm going to push ahead and move forward to have another day? What would you tell them to do?
When you're in the eye of the storm, that's a very difficult place to be. And you have to have belief or faith in something. Faith in
Hmm.
something that the outcome is going to be a good one. Even though it may look terrible now,
Hmm.
there is a silver lining. And it may not be immediate now or even for years, like it was in my case. But
Yeah,
eventually, the everything will unravel and the path will
indeed.
reveal itself.
Hmm.
Everything that's happening is happening for our greater good, even though it doesn't seem that way.
Hmm. And I've heard people say things don't happen to you, they happen for you. And it's like, oh, I don't always want to learn a lesson, but that sometimes like, no, I don't want to learn anything in this. But seriously, it is so vitally important when a person learns. And say if a person wants to learn more about you or from you, how could they connect with you? Do you have a website, email? This is your time to tell us how people can connect and learn more about you, your work, and your journey.
So the best place to look for me is on my website. It's genuinelymaria.com, genuinelymaria.com, and you can book a complimentary session there, and let's have a conversation if you're interested.
Hmm.
Um, and I would say I'm very young to social media because I have a bit of an allergy to it right now, but that's getting better.
Uh-huh. And it's ironic that prior to our Zoom today, we be talking about allergies. So I like how he was like, have an allergy to social media right now. A lot of people have like a love-hate relationship with it. So I get it. I totally get it. Especially people like us who are more heart-centered, in the moment, intuitive guides when it comes to the work that we do. Even with you as nutrition, it's more than just facts and figures. You put your seeing eye into it, you put your heart into it because you want to craft something that is unique to that client. And so as we come to a close, I could talk to you all day, and that hour has gone by pretty quickly. Maria, think back to the woman that you were even the night before your life was like turned upside down. And I want you to share with us, what is it about the version of Maria that you are now that brings you the most fulfillment and joy?
I think that I am much more authentic. I think back then I was living not to my true being. I had a bunch of masks.
Mm,
And I'm not saying that today I might not have some of those masks. However, it's so much better. So many layers have been peeled.
mm.
And I really love the person I am today.
Thank you for tuning in to this episode of the Power Transformation Podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to follow or subscribe, leave a 5-star rating, and write a review. It helps us inspire even more listeners. And don't keep it to yourself. Share it with someone who could use a little power in their transformation. Until next time, keep bouncing back, keep rising, and be good to yourself and to others.